Good evening and welcome to Crossfire with me, Gloria Mumbakalambo. Now, in case you're joining this program for the very first time and watching it for the very first time, remember that Crossfire comes your way every single Monday of the week at 20 hours right here on Spring 24 TV. And now, let's get right into it. So, I mean, it's been over 45 days since the country changed its governing party in the August 12th general elections. I'm sure that, of course, most of us, or most of you out there may be curious to know exactly what the former ruling Patriotic Front has been up to in the last few weeks. So to speak about this and more, in studio with me tonight is Patriotic Front Vice President, who happens to be a former Justice Minister as well as Water Member of Parliament, Honorable Given Lubinda. Honorable, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Good evening, Madam, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's start on this note. I mean, how would you describe the August 12th general elections?
Shocking. One word, shocking. For almost everybody in Zambia, shocking.
How so?
I've met with many people across the breadth and width of the country. And when we go into discussing the 12th of August, 2021, just as a day, but also as a polling day, people register shock. People did not see this coming. Neither the people in the ruling party then or the people in the ruling party now. They didn't see this coming. This is the reason why it's extremely shocking.
What do you think happened?
Quite a lot of things happened. First of all, I have to say that probably the then ruling party, the Patriotic Front, may not have had the ear to the ground. They may not have understood what was happening and may not have seen the undercurrents. But I suppose that nobody saw those undercurrents. And this is the reason why everybody was shocked. Shocking also in the sense that never in the history of Zambia did we see the kind of violent celebrations that we saw. Zambia gained its independence in 1964, and after those elections, there was jubilation across the country. In 1991, when we changed from a one-party state to a multi-party state, there was a lot of jubilation in the country. There was not one single person who lost their life. Not a single person was injured. People went about celebrating. In 2011, when President Michael Sata won elections, there was jubilation across the country. Not a single life was lost. Not a single person was involved in any violence. But the 2021 elections were shocking that people were celebrating through being violent. As I speak to you, I know of many people who are still in hiding. They have not gone back to their homes. As I speak to you now, you just have to see social media. It is awash with threats. It is awash with people being brutally beaten, people being tortured as a way of people celebrating their victory. So this shows you that even those who won elections were not prepared to win. They actually, in my view, had prepared themselves for a loss. And I would like to borrow from the words of President Hakainde Hichilema. When he was addressing the press briefing at State House, you recall he said, "Zambians, you are lucky that I'm the one who won. Had it been somebody else who won, this country would have gone into bloodshed." And one wonders, what did he mean? And yes, I agree with him. Seen from the amount of violence that has taken place in this country, in the run-up to the elections and post-elections, he is right. Had it been Edgar Lungu who won the elections, I'm sure that those who are creating this violence would have created mayhem in the country. So to a large extent, I also say, glory be to God. Thank you, God, for saving the country. For making it possible for Hakainde Hichilema to be declared winner and not any other.
Interesting that you say that.
Thank you for making Edgar Lungu lose elections, because he is a humble person who did not want this country to go into mayhem. He accepted defeat happily and conceded in a very honorable manner. And I just want to use the words. These are not my words. These are the words of President Hakainde. Hadn't he won, there could have been bloodshed in Zambia. So thank you, God, for making him win.
All right. Let's talk about the past almost 2 months for the Patriotic Front. How has this period been for you in opposition?
Remember that the Patriotic Front is one of those political parties, and the only political party, except now for the UPND, which was formed as an opposition political party and went to being a party in government. The second is the UPND. The other two parties that have led Zambia were never formed as opposition political parties. They were formed as movements. UNIP was a movement to create independence, to agitate for independence. The movement for multi-party democracy was a movement to create an environment for multipartyism. The Patriotic Front was created to be an opposition political party, and for 10 years we enjoyed our lives as opposition political party. We enjoyed our stay in government for 10 years, and now we've gone back to where we were in the opposition. So the last few days that we've been in the opposition have been days of us picking up the pieces and reorganizing ourselves as an opposition political party. That is what we've been working hard on.
You mentioned a number of things in your preamble, one of them being the bloodshed, and that, of course, that you described as a way of celebration. Another thing that you mentioned earlier was that the August 12th election results were quite shocking for you. Where do you think you went wrong? I mean, 2.8 over million Zambians voted you out of power.
One of the things that we've been doing ever since we lost government, we lost authority, is to conduct a post-mortem. And I've been reliably informed that the report is ready. We are waiting now to conclude the by-elections on the 21st of October. And the first meeting after that, the first Central Committee meeting, will be receiving the report. So after that, you can come and ask me that question. For now, if I say anything, it will be preemptive. There are some things that I'm aware of myself, which could have led to the defeat. But I would like to speak on behalf of the party, and for me to do that, I have to look at the report of the post-mortem.
But I mean, a lot of things have been said. I respect the fact that you're saying you're doing a post-mortem to understand exactly where the party went wrong, being in government for 10 years. And unfortunately to say so for the party as well, that happens to be, you happen to be the shortest serving political party in government as compared to the other previous political parties that served in government. But I'm sure you, even just as an individual and as a politician, former minister, former MP, where do you think the PF went wrong?
You're trying to squeeze information out of me, which I've said to you.
Well, that's basically my job, but I would
wait until the report is looked at by the Central Committee, and that report shall be looked at soon after the 21st of October. If you ask me of my views, I'll give you my views, but as Vice President, I have to be careful that I don't present my views before I see the party's views.
All right, well enough. We'll respect that particular position. Now, let's talk about the party that took over from you when it comes to administration, the UPND. I've already mentioned this. It's been 40-plus days of them being in government. How do you think they've handled the transition so far? Of course, a number of things have come out, and we've seen institutions such as the DEC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, coming out so loud on the corruption that was mirrored by your administration. How do you think the UPND has handled that alongside the other institutions, the other institutions that are quasi-government or just government institutions?
I've commented on the performance of the UPND government, and I've been bashed left, right, and center. And a lot of those who are bashing me are saying, give them time, wait. It's too early for you to judge them. And yet they're also celebrating when it's too early. Why is it that they are celebrating and saying, yes, we're seeing action taking place, but they don't want to receive criticism? Now, you don't have to wait for the government to have its own budget for you to understand where it's taking the country. President Hakainde already indicated to us in his maiden speech to Parliament, he indicated to us the trajectory that his government is going to take. And from that speech, you can deduce that there's going to be a great departure from the promises that he made to the Zambian people the promises on which he was voted for, the promises on which 2.8 million bought confidence in him. Number one, you and every viewer remember very clearly that President Bali and his UPND went around the country, and this they didn't do only now in the run-up to these elections, but they've been doing this ever since 2006 when President Hakainde was first elected president of the UPND. They've been saying they're going to grant free education to every Zambian child from nursery to secondary, to tertiary. When President Hakainde was presenting his maiden parliamentary speech, what did he say? He said, we are going to give bursaries to vulnerable children. I don't have to wait for his budget for me to see whether he's going to give free education. He has already said it. In his statement to Parliament, he has said it. He is not going to provide free education to children like he had promised. He is instead is going to give bursaries to vulnerable children. So, there, he told us when he was having his speech at his community house, he said, tick the boxes. And I'm very good at ticking the boxes. So on that point, it's a cross. He didn't achieve and he doesn't intend to achieve. He told the Zambian people that if you vote for me, on the 1st of September, I'm going to make sure that farmers get a 250 kwacha for a bag of maize. I don't have to wait for his budget. I don't have to wait for 2022. He did not say September 2022. For goodness sake, he said September 2021. Today, madam, is October. Has he increased the price of maize to the farmer? No. The price still remains 150 kwacha. So again, another cross. He told the Zambian people that come November 1, he's going to reduce the price of mini meal to 50 kwacha. Madam, we're coming to mid-October. If he has not yet bought the maize from the farmers, how is he possibly going to reduce the price of mini meal to 50 kwacha? How come he did not talk about that in his parliamentary maiden speech? He criticized us for borrowing for consumption. And he was saying, when I form government myself, I shall not borrow for consumption. I shall borrow to invest in economic sectors. Madam, from 2011, we found a debt of $2 billion. We increased it, yes, to 15 billion. It took us 10 years to increase it from 2 to 15. President Bali, in 45 days, has already borrowed 1.5 billion. And people expect us to remain mute and say, yes, he's doing well. No, he is not doing well. He is not consistent with his manifesto. He is not consistent with what he promised the Zambian people. The last time that Zambia, if you go to the FRA and ask for records at FRA, they will tell you that the last time that Zambia lost maize as a result of not being bought was in 2010. That's when we had loss of maize in this country. From 2011 to 2021, we've never experienced any loss of maize. We're going to experience it this year. As a matter of fact, some maize is already getting rotten. Now, this year, as we speak. Why is that? It is because, and some people are saying, no, but he's running the PF budget. It is not a question of running the PF budget. It is a question of lack of knowledge. It's a question of ignorance. You remember that we had already instructed Food Reserve Agency to buy maize. And we had told the grain traders to also go out on the market and buy. What were they telling the farmers? We're going to increase the price to 250 kwacha from 150. So some farmers decided we shall wait. I'm a small-scale farmer myself. And when I heard that, I was just thinking, just in case it happens, let me benefit on this 100 kwacha extra. And I kept my maize at my farm. Now, I'm afraid I have to start running after FRA. And many farmers did that. And our maize is going to waste. Who has caused it? False promises. By who? President Bali.
All right. I love the fact that you've brought into the picture the manifesto of the UPND, now ruling party, when they were in opposition, and exactly what is happening now that they are the ruling party. Let me take you back to 2011. And exactly, I would love to get this from you. How easy is it for a new administration, for a government or a political party taking over, transitioning into a new one after an election? 2011, you won the election from the former ruling MMD. And of course, we had the famous more money in your pocket. We had the famous 90 days rule and promise. How soon was it for you to implement the promises that you made to the Zambian people?
Our mantra was a combination of more money in the pockets and lower taxes. Those two were our major selling points. And those who are viewing us will recall that we achieved them within 90 days.
More money in people's pockets,
exactly.
90 days.
90 days.
What can you attribute that to? What factors make you think that majority Zambians had money in 90 days of your governing?
Government has control over the whole national economy, but government also pays civil servants. And those civil servants' earnings spur the growth of the economy in the informal sector. How did we manage that in 90 days? You will recall that in the first budget that we delivered in 2011, the 2012 budget, we doubled salaries of all civil servants. We doubled them. Isn't that more money in the pockets of people? Because we doubled the salaries of civil servants, the civil servants' disposable income increased. Because of that, they could buy cars. And because they could buy cars, they could buy fuel. Because they could buy fuel, more fuel stations were put up and people were earning salaries from fuel stations. People bought taxis and employed people to run around with taxis. People were able to invest in houses. They built houses. Because of that, the cement factories that we expand production. That is how you put money in the pockets of people. We never at any one time said we'll come and tell you to just queue up and we give you money. We gave the money to those that we could have influence over, the civil servants. Secondly, we introduced the minimum wage so that any person who had an employment had to be paid the minimum wage. That minimum wage was higher than what the people were being paid hitherto. That was money in the pockets of people. Lower taxes. Madam, in 2011, the tax threshold was 1,000 kwacha. Anyone who earned 1 kwacha above 1,000 kwacha was taxed. We raised it fourfold to 4,000 kwacha. Meaning anyone who was earning from 1,000 kwacha to 4,000 kwacha now was not taxable.
All right, so
I hope you understand that.
I really, and we're going to get somewhere here. I love how you're breaking this down.
Yes, I'm trying to show you that we achieved our promises within 90 days. We did not walk back on our promises.
All right.
We could have gone, President Michael Sata could have gone to Parliament to say, we are not going to increase salaries until after we have fixed the economy. But because he was a man of honor, a man of his word, and he led a party of men and women who keep their word, we had to do that within the 90 days, the first 90 days.
All right. So let's compare the economies then. 2011, how much debt did Zambia have when you took over government?
That's not the issue.
And how was...
That is not the issue. Zambia then owed 2 billion. But tell me, how many roads did we have then? How many universities did we have then? How many civil servants did we have then compared to now? Madam, don't only compare one end of the trajectory, compare both. All right? So if you want to say, oh, because you only owed 2 billion, that's why you could increase salaries. No, that's not how it operates. We owed 2 billion, but the economic infrastructure was much weaker than it is now.
All right, so
the GDP was much lower than it is now.
All things being fair then, having said that, don't you think that with the debt that the UPND has inherited and the fact that they've actually said that they inherited an empty coffers, B or Z, to say the list in the most simplest terms, don't you think that really for them to implement some of those promises that they made the Zambian people as soon as or just after getting into government is...
The people who are viewing us are going to start wondering whether you believe what you're saying.
No, I'm here. I really want to understand.
Yes.
I mean, you were in government for 10 years, since 2011, and
yes.
you, like the UPND,
are you sure,
took over government from the MMD.
Are you sure that UPND inherited empty coffers?
Well, that is exactly what the president mentioned.
Yes, it is what he says against the reality, madam. And not everything that Hagainde says is true, unfortunately. And I'll tell you how. Number one, he refused to go and say that statement in Parliament. Instead, he said it on BBC. Who's going to hold him accountable for what he says on BBC? Nobody. But he's held accountable for what he says in Parliament. He didn't go to Parliament to say, I've inherited empty coffers. He didn't. And in case he did, then I should start to say that we have now a miracle man at State House. Because from empty coffers, he has managed to pay 249 million kwacha to CDF. From empty coffers. How come? From empty coffers, he has never failed. And have you ever heard any civil servant coming to Spring TV saying, we have not been paid by the PF government? Which month did you hear that we never paid?
Well, there were a few delays, but payment was made.
We have always been regular. When we lost office, have you heard of any fuel shortage as a result of lack of money? No. We've been selling fuel. There's been fuel everywhere. Have you heard that farmers are not selling their maize to FRA? Actually, this government said, please increase the quantity of maize you buy from farmers. How can they buy maize from farmers if they have empty coffers?
So, Honorable...
How did President Hagainde go to New York if he inherited empty coffers? He used his money? Did he get money from his companies? No. So, please, tell the people what President Bali said in Parliament. The second thing President Bali said on BBC was that there is hidden debt. Remember that statement? What did his Minister of Finance say? His Minister of Finance went to Parliament and said, as a matter of fact, it is true what Walyangandu was saying. We owe 12.9 billion in external debt and 1.5 billion in local debt, 14 billion. This is exactly what the PF government has been saying. But President Bali was saying, no, they have hidden debt. It's hidden somewhere. Hidden where his Minister of Finance hasn't seen it. So that's why I'm saying to you that please make sure that when you're on programs like this, you don't continue to repeat untruths.
No, I mean, my job is to find out exactly what your thoughts are.
But you must also, as a reporter, you must also do one thing, to educate our people.
Honorable, in educating, we get exactly what we are told.
Yeah,
unfortunately, in this country, we don't have access to information. That's the bill that we've been... That's the bill that we've been crying for that was not implemented. So it is very difficult to get certain information.
Next time, you must say that there was a contradiction between what the president said on BBC and what his minister said, so that the people get the correct picture. Well,
that's for you to say. Let's move on to how you would rate your performance when it comes to economic, because the biggest thing that the UPND administration has been preaching is economic transformation and fixing the economy. How do you think the PF government performed when it comes to the economy?
We performed very well under the circumstances. We performed extremely well under the circumstances.
What circumstances are those?
The circumstances that we were fixing the economy under were, one, a dilapidated infrastructure. For your own information, the last time that Zambia invested in the most important factor of production, energy, was in 1977, madam. 1977. Zambia had to wait 34 years for President Michael Sata to come in office for us to start investing in the energy sector. Meanwhile, you were hoping that you can increase your copper production, and yet your energy production was still 1977 levels. You're producing then a 1,200 megawatts of power. By the time that we're leaving office, we'd more than doubled it. And now I hear the Minister of Finance saying we're going to use the mines to create jobs. How could those mines have even been operating hadn't we in the PF invested in the energy sector the way we did? Spring TV couldn't have been operating now because if you recall, before we invested in energy, load shedding was the order of the day. Secondly, you had only 2 public universities when we took over in 2011. 2 public universities. The ones who are believed to be the ones who voted us out are the young graduates. Graduating from where? From the 8 universities that we have now. And we created an environment where even others could invest in universities. That was all to grow the economy. Madam, the very first time that Zambia had surplus food was in 2012. Why? Because of the economic policies of the Patriotic Front. It used to take you an hour to drive from Charleston into town. It takes you half the time now because of the road network.
So now you've brought in a very important point there, Honorable, which is the students, the 2.8. Let's talk about that a little. The ones that were graduating from universities. One of the major cause that they really based their complaints on was, first of all, the way the meal allowances situation was handled. Another thing was the influx of graduates that we had on the streets that were not employed. Don't you think that costed the Patriotic Front quite a bunch?
We said we're going to create employment, but we're talking about sustainable employment. Unfortunately, our friends played to the gallery, and they made the youths believe that simply by changing government, the jobs will be awash. We were telling the students, we were telling the Zambians, we want to create sustainable jobs in the agricultural sector. This is the reason why we invested so much money in opening up aquaculture, the aquaculture sector. We put in a lot of money in agriculture. We were intending to empower youths through using their own skill, their own labor to create employment. We did not tell the people that we're going to create employment by just a magic wand. But of course, young people are extremely excited, they're extremely anxious, they want things done yesterday. And when somebody came to them and told them, I'm going to create employment overnight, they believed it. But unfortunately, 45 days later, not a single job has been created. Instead, 1.5 billion kwacha has been borrowed. To do what? They were telling us we'll not eat this infrastructure. Now they have borrowed 1.5 billion to go and build schools. Okay, and then look at the contradiction. They said we'll create employment. We'll increase salaries of civil servants by 1,500 kwacha. Did he talk about that when he went to open parliament? No. Instead, his minister said, sorry, under this economy, under the current economic environment, we cannot increase salaries. There's going to be a wage freeze. Maybe the first time we increase salaries is in 2025. And they have also created a job freeze. There's not going to be any more jobs created. All right? We were not saying that we're going to create jobs only by a magic wand. We were saying we're going to create jobs by making sure that the private sector is given sufficient space.
So what jobs are these that you were talking about? Sustainable jobs, but what type of jobs? I mean, if our teachers and our doctors are out there, they've graduated and they haven't found employment, but then we have schools and universities and we have health centers that have been completed, but then they're not functional, there's no manpower.
There's no government that has employed as many professionals as the PF government. We employed nurses, we employed doctors, we employed teachers. We were continuously employing. We even had a program for employing more teachers in 2022, more nurses in 2022. You remember what we did with regard to the fight against COVID? We employed 563 nurses, frontline nurses, to assist in the fight against the COVID. What has this government done? The moment they just got office, they said all these jobs are coming to an end. So we were creating employment in the formal as well as in informal. But I want to emphasize that for us, we did not promise the youths that we're going to use a magic wand. For us, we said we're going to create employment, especially by stimulating the growth of the informal sector, by making sure that people go and invest in plantations, by making sure that people invest in aquaculture, by making sure that people invest in processing, not for the government alone to employ. We wanted the government to create an environment through which the private sector would thrive and therefore create sustainable jobs.
All right. Before we take a short break, I know my director is buzzing in my ears. Just a quick question, Honorable. The AG's report has been very big on the corruption and mismanagement of funds that were in its report, the 2020 report that we have been dealing with as a media recently. What's your take on that? How did your administration let such levels of mismanagement and misappropriation of funds in this institution?
You must please read the Auditor General's report in the manner in which it is written. And there is this notion that every figure that appears in the Auditor General's report is as a result of theft or misappropriation. No, read that report carefully. There could be cases of misapplication of funds, but that does not mean misappropriation. It doesn't mean theft. It doesn't mean
two
corruption.
Different terms. Yeah.
They are two different things. But the general idea is for everybody to say, oh, all this money was stolen. Read that report properly. Okay, read it properly. And the good thing is that that report is meant for Parliament. And it is meant for Parliament so that Parliament can take corrective measures. And you know that if anyone is cited in the Auditor General's report, that person is brought to book. Right? That person is brought to book. Yes. So let those people who are reported to have misappropriated funds be brought to book. And if you ask me, how did you allow this to happen? I am not a civil servant, madam.
It was your administration,
Yes,
though.
but, madam, are you saying that you have ever heard that a minister goes to the permanent secretary and directs the permanent secretary, produce this receipt here, produce that receipt there? Then you have a total wrong interpretation of the role of a minister. The same that the UPND had before they formed government. Now they've come to realize that, no, there are some things they cannot do. There are some things that are done by civil servants.
So, Honorable, what are you trying to get at? It wasn't the PF administration and its ministers in itself and the cabinet, but then it was the PSs and the controlling officers? What?
Of course, they're the ones who utilize money. You've never heard of any minister signing a check? Never. And if you read that report, have you ever seen that there's a minister who's mentioned in there? No. And when you ask about policies, it is the PF government that came up with the amendment to the Public Finance Management Act. Before the PF government, you could just abuse money, you could abuse systems, you could cause for the government to lose revenue and nothing happens to you. We amended the Public Finance Management Act, madam, so that now any person who causes loss of government money through negligence shall be surcharged. Why did we do that? We did that because we wanted to arrest the negligent abuse of resources. So if you say, why was it happening under your watch? Madam, we put the systems in place. Okay? And if the operatives are the ones who did not follow the systems, that's why we have the law in place, for the law to curb that.
But I mean, a lot of stakeholders, I know you say that it's not really the patriotic front in itself, as you've rightly put it, but really we've had a number of stakeholders come out strongly in how they feel your administration was marred with corruption. Also, at a larger extent, we saw recently, or we heard recently, the American president who actually mentioned and described your government as such. Where do you think all this is coming from?
I wrote to the Chargé d'Affaires. I personally wrote to the Chargé d'Affaires of America to remind the Americans that they are principles of sovereignty that cannot be crossed. The Geneva Convention is very clear on what a foreign state can say about another. And for you to make reference to Biden,
of course,
and what he said about Zambia is not acceptable at all. Because I can say a lot about America. I can say a lot. For him to call us corrupt, I have to remind him, and I did remind him, that he must not play a blame game. Because as a matter of fact, the democracy of Zambia, young as it is a more mature democracy than his.
What makes you say that?
Biden went to Capitol Hill without his predecessor. His predecessor called his election a sham. His predecessor said Biden had rigged those elections. There was violence at Capitol Hill on the election of Biden. Serious violence. He has no right whatsoever to point fingers at other countries. Look at what is happening in Haiti. And he calls himself a Democrat and a clean man. Didn't his own countryman Trump call him corrupt? It's not me, it is Trump who called him corrupt. So leave him out. I don't think that we should discuss sovereign states here.
That was
Let's
one
discuss
example.
Zambia.
That was one example, but I mean, we have local institutions as well, Transparency International Zambia being one of them, and among many other stakeholders. They've clearly said that, look, the previous administration, referring to your administration, was marred with and by corruption. Where do you think all this is coming from?
I think we've talked about this.
Yes, we have.
I have said to you, madam, I have said to you that the Auditor General's report is there for all to see. And if it has named individuals in there, let those individuals be brought to book. To generalize is not fair. It is not right. Okay? And the issue is, people must be asking, did this government put in place any measures to curb corruption? And I've given you one example. We are the ones who amended the Public Finance Management Act. To do what? To strengthen the utilization and respect of public resources. If individuals circumvented that, you can't blame the whole entity, you can't blame the whole government, you can't blame the whole party. No.
All right. That being said, this is a Crossfire Monday with me, Gloria Mumbakalambo. Tonight we sit down with the Vice President of the Patriotic Front, that's Honorable Given Lubinda. We're discussing many other issues, among them exactly how the party is faring so far after having lost the August 12th general polls. We take a short break. Join us in just a few seconds. Keep watching.
Spring TV is now offering outside broadcasting services, event coverage, live streaming, drone coverage, sporting events, live editing, and many more. For hire, contact us on +260 961 415226 or info@spring24.tv. S24.
Welcome back. This is a Crossfire with me, Gloria Mumbakalambo. Tonight, we are sitting down with the former ruling party, the Patriotic Front. In studio is Honorable Given Lubinda, former Minister of Justice and former Kawat Member of Parliament, and now Vice President of the Patriotic Front. A number of issues have been discussed. You're not too late, though, to the table. Welcome back, like already mentioned. Now, Honorable, let's speak about the restructuring that you and some officials from the PF have been speaking of, that you are undergoing, or the party is undergoing currently. Tell us more about that.
No, we are undergoing rebranding. And this rebranding is obviously inspired by the loss of elections. And as Vice President, I have gone to some parts of the country and I've spoken to members of the party. and encourage them to do a membership audit. What is the reason for that membership audit? One, like I said to you earlier, some of our members are currently in hiding. They're not in their homes, so we don't know where they are. Some of them, they are hiding and we know where they are. Others are weak people and they've decided because we've lost elections, they're going to stay away from the Patriotic Front. So we first have to find out where our people are. As we're doing that, we're also introspecting. And I've encouraged members of the party, particularly leaders of the party, to introspect. While we're doing the post-mortem, which is the third thing that we're doing, I'm also encouraging people to take a personal view of things, to ask ourselves, what is it that we did at individual level, which we shouldn't have done? And what is it that we should have done at individual level, which we didn't do? So that when we now come and sit and look at the product of all this work, we can then start to say, how do we forge ahead? And in forging ahead, we have to bring ourselves together. And because President Edgar Lungu indicated to us that he will not be available for elections in 2026, we therefore have to move the party to go into a general conference where we shall elect a president of the party who, in accordance with our constitution, shall also be the presidential candidate.
All right. I would love to touch more on that particular point. But before we do that, Honorable, just apologies to you and the viewers. We have to go on a short break just to fix our technical end when it comes to the sound of our guests. And so just give us about a minute and we'll be right back. Keep watching. Apologies. Apparently your mic went off, so somebody's rushing to fix it now.
When you have the internet, you have the news. Why do I listen to anything else? Is everything you read online the truth? Up-to-date news, live interviews, debates, business, sports, right at the source of your story. Social media has made information easily accessible, but are the stories being told factual? With Crossfire Mondays, be sure to get the truth from the experts. Business and technology start us off on Tuesdays. This looks at not only established institutions, but the ones beginning and also the ones seeking redemption, local entertainment, cuisine, and arts. It's the Zambian culture and stories presented to the world like nothing we've seen before.
So if you are a seeker of the truth and want to be up to date with what's happening in the world of current affairs, business, sports, and entertainment, Spring TV's S24 range of content promises to keep you in the know and invites you to be part of the conversation. Because at Spring TV, we are at the source of your story.
Spring TV is now offering outside broadcasting services, event coverage, live streaming, drone coverage, sporting events, live editing, and many more. For hire, contact us on +260 961 415226 or info@spring24.tv. S24.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. And of course, apologies once again for having had that technical glitch when it comes to our sound department. But that has been fixed. And of course, we're good to go. Honorable, you were explaining to us earlier how the party is rebranding itself. You mentioned that now you have to go for a general conference, you call it.
Right.
All right. So what are who are the top names? Are you aspiring for the top position yourself?
I don't think it's time for us now to start talking about who are aspiring. This is time for us to regroup, to reorganize. When all is said and done, and we say we've set the date, then I think we shall open for people to start making applications for them to be considered by the delegates to the conference.
So how soon do you think this will be done, though?
I can't say.
All right.
It all depends on how quickly we regroup.
Okay.
I can't say. If it were up to me, I would really want this to be done as quickly as possible because, as you can imagine, to sell whoever is going to be our presidential candidate will take some time. So we need all the time that there is. And the sooner we go to the conference and elect our president and presidential candidate, the better for us.
All right. Well
But
said.
we should not do that in indecent haste, that we go and have a conference which becomes shambolic. And this is the reason also why I'm appealing to all members of the Patriotic Front to be wary of those who may be showing intentions now, because by showing intentions now in campaigning, what are we doing? We're just creating factions within the party. And we shouldn't entrench these factions, because once we do, then the outcome of the conference may not be generally accepted by all. If we go into it as a united party, we go into it as a concerted force, then we shall emerge even more united. So I'd like to appeal to all those who have ambitions to please keep their ambitions to themselves until when the time comes. This is the reason why, as for me, I don't even want to discuss the matter.
All right. We anticipate to see who will take over from the former president, President Edgar Lungu. Now, you have rightly put it that you're not rushing, and of course you won't give us any more details of that details to that particular point. But then, in the next 5 years, as Zambians return to the polls, what or where do you see the PF in? Is there hope? Really, we haven't, in this history, this country is known for that. We haven't taken back any party that has once held the helm of power into government. Do you think yours will be different 5 years from now?
Have we had a party that was in government for 10 years? Have we?
No, we haven't.
No, we haven't. So there's always a first time. Okay? And you cannot use MMD and UNIP experience and rub it onto the PF. There's a big distinction between these political organizations. I already tried to explain to you and your viewers that whereas UNIP was meant to win us independence from the colonial masters, MMD was meant to just introduce multi-party democracy, whereas the Patriotic Front was established as a political movement, as a party, a political party. So there's a big distinction.
All right.
And I'm sure that you have even seen from the reactions of the people when UNIP was defeated by MMD, almost everybody just shifted. They became anti-UNIP. But not for the Patriotic Front. We still are enjoying a lot of popularity. As a matter of fact, even some people who are standing on the fence now are coming to Patriotic Front. Some people are telling us, I was in Mwansabombwe, I was in Kawambwa over the weekend, and many people are saying to me, Ninshi Church Tike Twaile Tedela. Farmers are crying. I did indicate, and I was inspired to say that by the people, the views I'm getting from the people. That's why I said sooner rather than later. And actually I should have said people have already started missing Edgar Chagwa Lungu. They're already missing the governance of
What
Patriotic
exactly
Front.
do you think they miss about the PF?
A lot. I mean, the Patriotic Front was delivering. We go out of office and all of a sudden we have frequent offcuts of power. All of a sudden, network on mobile phones is erratic. Already. And maize is going to waste. Farmers, every year from 2011, were receiving their fertilizers in good time. By June, July, farmers would be ready to go and plant. This year, as we speak, today, madam, middle of October, farmers haven't received their fertilizer. And you think they will be excited?
So are you saying now that you think the minds of the over 2.8 million Zambians that voted you out or voted against you would have changed in 2026?
By 2026, the vast majority will have come to the realization that what happened on the 12th of August 2021 was a big, big setback. They will realize that. Some have already started realizing. The young men and women who went in their gowns to vote, I can see them also wearing gowns now looking for jobs. They're looking for jobs. And if those young people are not given jobs, what do you think they will do? They will then realize that the PF meant well, because the PF was not giving them false promises. Not at all.
Do you think you will be an option on their mouths, or do you think they would rather go for another political party? I mean, you've been in politics quite a while, so you obviously understand.
I have said to you already that if we were the shortest-lived government, like you said yourself, there is nothing stopping us from being the first government party to go out of government and to go back into government. There is nothing stopping us, madam.
Clearly.
And I can say to you that where I sit now, I see no alternative whatsoever. Because, yes, 2.8 million people voted for UPND and President Bali. But that does not mean that they are members of the UPND. No. They are not members of the UPND.
Of course not.
And the strongest party, the party with the largest following in Zambia, is the Patriotic Front. And this has been seen from the previous elections and all the by-elections that we've been having. And because of the structures that we have across the country, we are the strongest political party. All that is required now, madam, is for us to regroup and rebrand. And like I said, if we're not going to be distracted by those who wish us ill, and those who wish us ill, some could actually be inside the party, mind you, but others could be sponsored. Bear that in mind. Others could be sponsored just to destroy the party. So if we in the party who mean well for this party remain united, and we remain confident in ourselves and in our institution, 2026 victory is certain.
All right. My director is buzzing my ears once again, asking that we pick up phone lines. And of course, remember that this is a very interactive program. And of course, you can drop us your comments and contributions. As we only have 5 minutes to come to the end of the program, just quickly drop us your comments and contributions on our Facebook page, as well as call a number that is directly on your TV set or whatever gadget you may be using to watch this particular program. And you'll be able to come through. We're speaking to the Patriotic Front Vice President, Honorable Given LUBINDA, and of course he's given us a number of views, of course, how he would rate the new administration, how they've performed so far under the leadership of His Excellency President Hakainde Hichilema, and many other issues. Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. All right, we seem to have lost that particular one. Please do feel free to call us in. The numbers are on your screen. Let us know where you're watching us from, what your name is, and what your contribution is. A question or comment may be. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello, good evening.
Very well, thank you. What is your name, sir, and where you're calling us from?
I'm Jack calling from Manta.
Yes, Mr. Jack. Please go ahead with your contribution, comment, or question.
Okay. I just wanted to remind your guest. I agree with him that PF is a good party. The only bad thing that differentiates PF from the current government is the issue of cadres. I think if they can only work on that issue, that is the major thing that contributed to the people not voting for PF. They have given so much power to cadres, sorry to mention the innocent Karimanshi and the rest of them who are almost becoming like the another wing of government. And the issues of guns, and we are almost creating a militia during the PF government. Otherwise, I personally, I don't see any difference. In fact, PF is even better than the current so far, if we compare. Maybe we give them time as they are saying. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jack from Mansa. The number is on your screen. Let us know where you're watching us from, what your comment is. And of course, Mr. Jack coming there from Mansa, talking about how cadreism, according to him, is one thing that caused the former ruling party to actually be voted out. Good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Yes, good evening.
Your name, sir, and where you're calling us from?
Yes, you are talking to Brian Makalisha, calling you from within Lusaka, Karingaringa.
Yes, Mr. Brian.
Yes.
Go ahead.
My contribution is on. I just want to ask Mr. Given LUBINDA on the previous election we held. The problem with the PF was they were campaigning. Their campaigns were focusing on one person instead of telling the people what they are going to do for the next 5 years. When I watched the visual ID, what was he saying on the visual ID there was he just mentioning the other political party candidates. Everyone was just talking about the other candidates instead of addressing the people what they are going to do. So it was just the same as they campaigning themselves or campaigning for that other candidate about what they were saying on that candidate.
All right.
So that also contributed to the fail of PF.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's Brian from Lusaka. One more call before we get to Honorable LUBINDA giving us his reaction, some of those points that the previous callers have raised, and of course we get to also wrap up the program. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Good evening, madam.
Yes, sir. Where are you calling us from, and what is your name?
I'm calling from Luingu.
Sorry?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm calling from Luingu.
Oh, wow, that's a very bad line. We can hardly hear you. You keep cutting, though. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from, sir?
I'm calling from Luingu.
Luingu. What is your name?
Yes. My name is Christopher Mulenga Mpata.
Mkwaiba Mulenga.
Empire. Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening, Wamulenga.
Yeah, you know, we are saying about the PF. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, the PF did a good job. Yeah, and you know, we are trying to say, let's organize ourselves. Hello, are you hearing
We can
me?
hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, we organize ourselves. Then we'll come back to our party.
All right.
Yeah. The only thing is that we can't really say the presidency Lungu didn't do well. No, he did. And we are trying to see what the other president has come. Let him continue what President Lungu left. Then we'll be very grateful if they do more than President Lungu did. Thank you very much for that.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mulenga. Director, just allow us 2 more calls, and then we get to conclude and get a response from the Honorable. Good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you, madam?
Very well, thank you. Your name and where you're calling us from?
This is Michael. I'm calling you from Wednesday, Papua.
Yes, Mr. Michael.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. LUBINDA.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Very well, sir. Sir, I would just like to contribute. I think I quite very much agree with you there. I think PF is still the most popular party and strongest party also in the country, with all due respect to the APND. But the issue that was raised by the previous caller, and I would want you to be very clear on that one, since we're in the process of rebranding. The cadres messed PF up. The cadres are the ones that caused the downfall of PF, I would say. So, sir, what is your take on the issue of cadres? If at all PF is going to get back into power?
All right.
I wanted to... Sure.
Thank you so much, Michael. Just one more, and then we get to close. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening. Kindly
Yes,
turn
good
the...
evening. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Please turn the volume on your television set down to 0 so we can be able to communicate with you quite clearly.
Okay, I did so.
Thank you very much. What is your name and where you're calling us from?
This is Mr. Kaonga from Kitwe.
Yes, Mr. Kaonga.
But PF is still popular. And the way Dr. Ed Barungu did it, even people are just surprised why people are voting for another party than that man. Because even when you go to village, where I am coming from, Muyombe village, that is in Kinga province, they built a big hospital there. So that when you go there, you find that, here in Muyombe, big hospital. It shows that PF has done a wonderful job. So even myself, I just behind the PF. So we in the praise, just rebrand it, and we are behind you.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, due to time, we have to close the phone lines there, which we opened them quite early so we can get the views of a number of people on exactly how the Patriotic Front performed and what they think led to the failure of the party to win the election. But of course, quite interesting views coming there. One very common denominator, to say the least, is cadreism, which is also what the current administration now has been strong on, and are saying that they're advocating for, or against rather, to say the least. What is your comment on that? How bad do you think
Thank you very much to the callers. They raised cardinal points, two cardinal points. First is the issue of cadreism. Second is the issue of the messaging. And these are matters that I take very seriously. I take such counsel very seriously. I hear you when you talk about cadres, that we allowed cadres to take center stage and cadres were appearing to be running a parallel government. Thank you very much for that feedback. This is the kind of feedback that we need. And I'm getting all this feedback from every person that I meet. I'm talking to people and they're giving me all this feedback. All this information shall feed into our postmortem. And it's on these matters that we shall work to build ourselves and become an even better political party. The second cardinal issue was the messaging, that rather than focusing on what we have done, a lot of us when we're campaigning, we're focusing on what another person was saying. And I hear you very clearly, but also I can say to you that in retrospect, I also think that we may not have done well to educate the people, to inform the people that what they were saying were just flimsy promises. We didn't manage to get to the hearts of the people. We should have made it more clear to the people that when these people are saying to you that they will give you free education, it is utopia, it can't happen. We should have been able to explain to the people that when they are saying they're going to increase your salaries by 1,500 kwacha per month, it is not tenable. We should have explained to the people, we should have reached to the hearts of the people by telling them that when they are saying they are going to create jobs, they don't mean it, because they will not be able to create jobs. We didn't manage to puncture holes in their campaign, whereas they managed to puncture holes in our campaign. And how did they do it? Number one, they were telling the people, yes, this government has created a lot of infrastructure, which they acknowledge. Yes, can you imagine this gentleman is talking about Muyombe Hospital? There are many hospitals scattered across the country. The Minister of Finance in Liua, when he was first elected Member of Parliament, there was not a single clinic. The PF government went and planted clinics in Liua. Where he comes from and where I come from in Kalabo, we used to take 48 hours to come to Mongo. Now we take only 45 minutes. We used to have people dying on the pontoon crossing from Zambia to Botswana. Now we have a beautiful bridge. Now, all this infrastructure, they were saying, yes, they have done this infrastructure. However, they were puncturing holes and saying, it's corrupt, it's corrupt, it's corruption, it's corruption. So while people were appreciating that we built this infrastructure, they were made to believe that we are corrupt. And they were made to believe that they will do things better, that they will not borrow. So I hear this counsel. Thank you very much for the counsel. I'm sure that as we go ahead to 2026, our trajectory will be different. And rebranding, as a matter of fact, and I was telling officials, I met officials in Eastern, Western, Northwestern, Luapula. I'll be meeting Southern Province tomorrow, and my message to all of them is that rebranding must not be change of shirt. Rebranding must not necessarily only be change of positions of people. Rebranding must be change of mindset. We have to change our mindset. If indeed we went round bragging that we have so much money and so on, it injured the people. Let's change. If we went round and were banging the ground wherever we went and showed power and so on, this is what people didn't like. Let's change that mindset. If we're going around on streets and stopping other vehicles from passing just to allow a ward chairman to drive on the road, let that change. Let's change our mindset. So I'm appealing to all members of the Patriotic Front, wherever you are, my brothers and sisters, the rebranding process is personal cleansing process. We must change our mindset, change our attitude towards leadership so that this becomes a transformation. Let's, between now and 2026, show servant leadership. And I'm pleading to members of the Patriotic Front to stick together, because the alternative will be ghastly. In the event that the Patriotic Front is not allowed to be strengthened, is not allowed to continue to grow, what we in fact be introducing in Zambia is a one-party state. And I'm saying this with the hindsight of the fact that the UPND, a party which I was involved in forming in 1998, has had to change its constitution so that the president now in the UPND can be a life president. And if we're not careful, we may actually end up in a situation where if the PF dies, we have a dictatorship. And I'll be addressing the press on Wednesday or Thursday to answer the question you asked about the DEC, the Anti-Corruption Commission. I don't want to take this little time here, but I'll be addressing the press on this matter to show my fears about Zambia regressing into a dictatorship if we're not careful about maintaining the strength of the Patriotic Front.
Dictatorship, I know we're running out of time, but just on that particular point, don't you think that we have enough laws that only allow a president to stand for the seat for only 2 terms?
Well, you don't necessarily have to have a life president to have a dictator. No. You can have a dictator within the limit of 10 years. It all depends on how they utilize power. Okay, so dictatorship does not mean the length of stay of a person in office. It means how the power is used. And this is a subject for my press briefing on Wednesday or Thursday. So make a date.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable, for coming through. And, of course, I'll take those as your final remarks. Of course, it has been a very interesting discussion.
If you allow me to have my final remarks by saying thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the viewers. Thank you for supporting us, and let's keep the faith. Thank you.
All right. On that particular note, we come to the end of this week's edition of Crossfire. Catch the program next week, Monday, same time, same place, with more interesting conversations surrounding governance and politics. And of course, tomorrow morning at 6, do catch our morning program, which happens to be Morning Daily with Amina and Yoela in the morning down to 9 hours. Thank you for watching. Good evening.